Okay, guys. Hello. Everybody's very, very lively today. I feel like because you know that next week is Thanksgiving and you have it off and everybody's just, woo, and then it's almost Christmas and everybody's just going to be really, really crazy. And that's okay. I feel a little bit that way myself. I don't have anything to give back to you. Why don't you send your accolade stories this way on your tables, and then I will come around and gather them.
What are you supposed to name yours? The accolade?
No, I don't care what you name it. Okay. I mean, some names are probably better than others, but I'm pretty cool. Matthias says he almost finished. Almost finished. Oh, hey guys, let's stop conversing. If this makes you feel better, if we get through all our material, I do tend to talk, I realize that, and make things last. But if we get through, I brought something fun to do, just because it's a holiday, you know. So if we can get done, if we have 5 minutes left at the end, we'll do our fun thing. Can I criticize it?
All I've been getting back is good job.
Oh, okay. I will try to criticize. You asked for it. Everybody's a witness. She asked for criticism. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Get your reading questions out. Wow. But you know, I come here tired, you guys, and then I leave tired too. But while I'm here, I can't be tired because you guys are so energetic. Just like flows into me. Okay. I had you read about, oh, there's a paperclip on the floor. I had you read about 2 separate topics. We need to, hey, Jesse, sorry, that's what happens. Your name gets thrown out. I had you read about 2 topics because each one in themselves we could talk a lot about, but they were fairly short. The first thing we talked about was traveling in the Middle Ages. And I asked you, what were the main difficulties when you travel, Alice? Okay, robbers, bad roads, tolls. Tolls, believe it or not. I assume, does everybody know what a toll road is? Okay, you've been to Chicago and taken a toll, or elsewhere. Taking the tolls. Yes, it does take a toll. So they said that even on a river, passing under the bridges, which doesn't seem fair to me because tolls are generally, well, do you guys know why they take a toll? What do they use it for? Yes, so if you use it, you help keep it repaired, which seems fair. My husband and I were biking along, we were doing the river drive, you know, from Sunset Marina up to Savannah. And we could only do it in 5-mile blocks because it's a 10-mile round trip and then I get tired. So we made it up to Cordova. Anyway, we were there and there was a footpath, a bike path, something, and there was a basket there and it was a toll bike path. It was an honor system thing. They didn't have a guardhouse there collecting toll. And I said, seriously, are they asking people? Well, because they have to keep it cleared and mowed and everything. And so people who use it help contribute to pay to keep it. I don't remember. up north on the bike trail as you go north. Okay, the bike trail, you can ride a bike all the way from Sunset Marina and Rock Island to Cordova on the bike trails anyway. Okay, that has nothing to do with, what? We didn't do that part. I didn't not do it because I didn't want to pay, and I would pay. I just want to make that clear. Oh yeah. Oh, don't suggest that. That's terrible. Okay, so it says Dorothy Mills tells us on the Loire River in France there were 70 tolls to go from Orleans to the sea. It was for passing under the bridges.
And you're not
I know. That's my point exactly.
Maybe like under the bridge?
The little guy. I see this little hovel and this little guy grabbing money from ships. Well, unfortunately, people in the past make decisions that we don't always agree with or understand, and I feel like I'm just delivering what they did. I'm not passing judgment on what they did. It does seem a little odd to me. So it could be expensive. Robbers. I don't need to explain that. Robbers are robbers. It's never a good thing. Bad roads. Now, oh, go ahead, Bailey. You had to walk on your feet or ride an animal, maybe.
Yeah, usually you don't.
Yes. And this goes with bad roads or goes with robbers? It could go, because it's hard to outrun the robbers. No, probably not. But you know, the Romans, in Roman times, are you guys with me? In Roman times, they had the best roads. The Romans built 50,000 miles worth of roads, and with layers of sort of like pea gravel and larger rocks and flagstones. And there are Roman roads still in use today because they needed quick transport of troops and stuff all over the empire. But when the Roman Empire fell and there was no one to keep up all the roads anymore, things started falling into disrepair. And by the flowering of the Middle Ages, it was a wreck. And you know, they didn't get as good as the Roman roads again till the 20th century. I am not kidding. I remember I read this, but when my kids and I were studying colonial times, and they said that it took, I think it was New York to Philadelphia, it took 10 days or 2 weeks because the roads were just mud and trees would fall across the road. Travel was terrible in colonial America. Obviously the Romans hadn't built roads here, but even in Europe, those roads that had fallen into disrepair, there was no one fixing them. And it took a long time. So when you whiz back home from here today, in however many minutes it takes you to get home, just be thankful that you're not, on a donkey, paying tolls, slogging through mud. It could be worse. They don't look like it could be worse. No, it couldn't be. So if you're on a journey in the Middle Ages, where are you going to spend the night? Okay, that's a monastery. Name one other place. Maya, name one other place. Outdoors. Roy. An inn. Yes. One of the above. A lot of times it might just be outside because there's nobody near. Do you remember what they said about when you come to a walled city? Tell me.
That there's not really a chance that they're going to open their walls or their doors to you after.
Yeah, they close the gate at dark, and they don't want people coming in. If you've ever seen the Lord of the Rings movies, and it's okay if you haven't, but when the hobbits show up at Bree, and there's a guard there, and they don't want to let them in. I'm not getting any recognition, so that's fine. That's the way it was. You shut the gates. What? They did get in, but they didn't want to. They weren't real thrilled to let them in. I'm going to swim upstream against the excitement all day. It's all right. You would just have to spend the night outside and wait for morning, wait for daybreak. That's just the way it is. So in an inn, she describes, I got to read it. No. Hang on. Because it's funny the way she, okay. There were inns for the merchant and peddler, neither too clean nor too comfortable. Inns were dicey in the Middle Ages. You didn't know who else was there, and you might not get a bed to yourself. You will be sharing a bed with somebody else whom you may or may not know, because you were just paying for a slot in a bed. You're paying for a room, paying for a place to put your body down. You'd have to pay for both slots, apparently. So, yeah, I mean, that blows us away. Can you imagine showing up at the Super 8 or the Holiday Inn and saying, yeah, you'll be sharing a bed with, you know, Joe from Quebec. I don't know why he's from Canada. Yes. Anybody. So there's a funny story about Ben Franklin, and I can't ever remember if it's John Adams or Thomas Jefferson. This is going to be a funny story. Hang on. You look dubious. Anyway, they were traveling and they had to stay together and they had to share a bed in an inn. But, you know, Ben Franklin was kind of wacky. You know, I mean, he was very creative and he was just into the latest ideas. And at that time, people really believed that the air at night was bad for you. Night air would make you sick. Yes, yes, don't be out in the night air. So, but Ben Franklin's like, no, night air is bracing and good for your lungs. And his compatriot, whether it was Thomas Jefferson or John Adams, I can't remember, said, was it John Adams? You know the story? It's like, no, don't open the windows, Ben. And so apparently, 2 founding fathers of our country laid there in a bed and argued over whether or not it was safe to open the windows overnight, which I just think is really funny. See, it was kind of funny. There was a little chuckle. So some people who were traveling, this is the next question I asked you, were pilgrims. What is a pilgrimage? I'm going to pick Bailey. What's a pilgrimage? Or was that a hand? Or was that just you stretching? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't see it. Yes, Jesse.
Yes, this is my lawyer. A pilgrimage is when people make a trip to where a saint stayed, lived, or was born. Jerusalem is a place where people come to live. Should I also say why?
Yes, please do.
Okay. They went on pilgrimages to satisfaction, sightseeing, and special privileges, which they were granted after or during the trip.
Okay. Beautifully done. So you go to a holy place, and the thing that makes it holy is the presence of saints. So if you're English, your closest pilgrimage site is Canterbury, the Cathedral at Canterbury. Does anybody remember why? We talked about this a few weeks ago. Something happened there, and someone died there.
Was it Thomas Becket?
Thomas Becket, who was murdered by the king's henchmen, if you recall, because he would not agree to the king's invasion of the church's rights. All right, and so they went and they killed him, and so people viewed him as a martyr because he died protecting the rights of the church. And they would go and visit Canterbury. The next nearest one, perhaps if you're in England, is Compostela in Spain, St. James of Compostela. People would go there. But if you were really adventurous, you would go to Jerusalem and you would go to the Holy Land. And people did this for a number of reasons. Somebody yesterday said it was like a spiritualized vacation or something like that. And I thought, okay, yes. For some people it was more spiritual, and for some people it was more vacation. Although I feel like traveling a couple of thousand miles on a donkey or on foot on those roads with robbers, paying tolls, wouldn't be as relaxing a vacation as we are used to. But people went for all sorts of reasons. And then they did get special privileges. You would come back, sometimes you'll read in medieval literature, they talk about a palmer. And a palmer, he's got a palm branch from the Holy Land because he went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Like a souvenir. Except it granted him, people would give him special privileges. Maybe, I'm making this part up, but perhaps something like you stop at an inn for lunch and they give it to you for free, or they give it to you half price because, oh, you're a Holy Land pilgrim. I respect that. I will give you a break. But some people, it was just a cool trip. Just like today, we have varying levels of devotion, you know, spiritual devotion, and it was the same then. So, the last traveler that Dorothy Mills talked about was travel. Okay, this is my imaginary map. Are we all with me on my imaginary map? Here's Britain, and here's Europe, and here's Italy. Travel, this is probably not even to scale then, all the way to the forest reaches of Asia, to China. That was a long way. Roy, lay it on me. Marco Polo. I'll tell you about his story in a minute. Yes. So there was actually a Chinese man that she talked about that journeyed towards Europe. But you guys, what? Yes. But, oh, Marco Polo? No. Oh, no, the guy who traveled, yes. So this is my imaginary map again, I'm sorry. You know, the Himalayas are in between Europe and Asia. Mount Everest is one of the Himalayas. There's mountains. It's not an easy journey. Or you can go down to the ocean and you can go around, you know, the Indies route. But that's fraught with difficulty too. This was a long trip. And so people didn't know a lot about what was happening there. We know now that there were huge empires in China, right, at the time, and great emperors and much wealth. But the people in Europe at the time didn't know that. They just knew China and Asia was this place almost like a dream, almost like a myth, you know, like something made up, where exotic spices came from. And they sent them to Venice, and Venice sent them to the rest of Europe. Tea. How many tea drinkers? Tea came from Japan and China. It's a plant, and that's where they first grew it. And people in Europe, they got the plant, but they didn't know really where it came from. Interesting story, maybe, if you're a tea drinker. Some people drink tea. I have some at home. It's called pu'er tea, and it's aged tea. It's sort of fermented and aged. It's supposed to be really good for your cholesterol. And it tastes a bit like wet dirt smells. It tastes a bit like wet dirt smells. But you get used to it. It's an acquired taste. Anyway, they say that the way they found out that they could serve tea this way is there was this guy, and he packed tea on his donkey, whatever, and he's traveling to the next station where he can sell his tea. And he packs it in containers, and it takes him a long time to get there. And by the time he gets there, the tea leaves are kind of mushed and stuck together, and they kind of smell a bit earthy. But apparently, he decides to try it out anyway, and that's aged tea. And so now it's really quite expensive to drink tea that tastes like dirt. So this was a mystery, right? And so in, I don't remember what year, the late 1200s, two brothers from Venice, the Polo brothers, decided to go to China. They decided to go exploring. They must have been very, very daring. Or bored. Or if they could go over there and get their hands on all that stuff that people sell, you know how buying and selling works. So you go to the place and you pay as little as you can to get it, right? And then you come home and you charge as much as you can for it from the people who can't go get it for themselves, right? This is what we do. Everybody, we understand this concept. So, but if you can go and get it yourself, then you can bring it home and sell it, you know, and make lots of money. I don't know that that was their main motivation. But they went and they met the Emperor of China, Kublai Khan. Khan probably just means, that's the title for ruler. Remember Genghis Khan? All right, and this is Kublai Khan. And he had this huge empire, and he took a real liking to the Polo brothers, who apparently picked up the language fairly quick. It's been pretty bright. And he interested the Khan in Christianity. And he said, why don't you go home and would you please ask the Pope to send missionaries to China? And we can get some sort of diplomatic connections going, right? So they went home. The Pope had died, and they hadn't elected a new one yet. So while they were waiting, they decided to get together some traveling friars and take with them, but they decided to just go on back. And they took Marco, 17-year-old Marco, who was the son of one of the brothers, and so the nephew of the other. And they went back to China, and they stayed for 20 years. It's a long time. Marco learned the language, and apparently he must have been really capable and responsible because Kublai Khan took a great liking to young Marco and started sending him on diplomatic missions all over his empire. He traveled to India, all over China. Well, like political diplomat, like on political business. They did, though, preach the gospel to the Polo and the friars that they brought. And they had some Christian converts there. But mostly he was using him for politics, like a political diplomat, which that's pretty, you must trust him, you know? But after a while, 20 years is a long time to be away from home, you know? And they just would like to go home. So finally they went to him and said, can we please go home? You couldn't just leave, you were in his service, you know? But he gave his blessing, I understand, and he rewarded them with all sorts of jewels and expensive gifts. They go home to Venice, and they show up, which they're wearing Asian clothing. They've aged 20 years. And they got beards, and they're not very recognizable. And they show up in Venice like, we're the Polos. No, I don't think you are. No, we really are. And so maybe after a, you know, close inspection, they realize, you are. I recognize you. Where have you been? We've been serving the great Khan of China, and he's fabulously wealthy, and he rewarded us. Yeah, no, you didn't. we don't believe your story. That sounds made up. Until the story says that they opened up their robes and they had pockets, and they just started taking out precious jewels. Like, no, we really did. See, here's what he gave us. Oh my goodness. So people believed them, but there was a problem in Venice. Venice was at war with another Italian city. Italian cities at this time fought each other almost constantly. Last year, those of you who did Greece with me last year, remember we talked about the Greek city-states fighting each other all the time, and they never got, same thing in Italy. Like, they're always fighting. So Venice is at war with someone, I don't even remember who. Genoa, thank you. And Marco, of course, I will sign up for the war. Of course, he's now in his late 30s. He's not a young man anymore, but highly capable. Unfortunately, he gets captured by the opposing side, by the Genoese. And they put him in prison. They're not going to execute him or anything. They just want ransom. They take prisoners of war and they just want them ransomed. And you know, the Polos could do it because they have all those precious jewels. So he's waiting in prison for his ransom. And he just, you know, it's not very exciting in prison. So he's just telling stories. And he starts telling stories about China. And a lady, a serving lady came in. I don't know if she was the daughter of the jailer or some woman came in bringing their food. And she overheard some of these stories. Are you making this up or is this really true? No, it's really true. I went. You should write this down. So some stories say she brought him then writing instruments. Some say that he was in there and he dictated. But we have the travels of Marco Polo because he did that. And we know a lot. Although for 20 years, maybe this isn't a very long book. You know, I'm not sure if this is an edited, you know, version when they translated it. But he wrote down what happened to him. Some of it's a little bit dry, political systems of the people he was visiting and that sort of thing. But I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts that aren't as dry, that are a little interesting. So this was in, say, around 1300, around the year 1300. Less than 200 years later, there's going to be a young man who has a copy of the Travels of Marco Polo, and he loves it. It's his favorite book. And it makes him think, though, about these far-off eastern places, and he thinks, you know, I feel like there ought to be an easier way to get there. I wonder if you could just start in Western Europe and sail west. I wonder if that would be an easier, and that man is who? Christopher Columbus. This was Christopher Columbus's favorite book as a young man. And it made him start thinking, all that stuff is over there, all this enormous empire, but there's got to be an easier way than crossing the mountains so unfortunately, we're not talking about Columbus today, but I will just put this in his defense. You know, the Greeks, years before this, had calculated the circumference of the Earth pretty accurately. But there were some other people who calculated it not so accurately, and Columbus, unfortunately, used their figures. So he really, really thought it was not as far around the world as it was. Also, he didn't know there was a big landmass in his way. You know, so people are fond of hitting on Columbus now, beating up on Columbus. Say again, Matthias? Oh, yes. Yeah, and maybe if he'd read his St. Brendan, you know, he'd know there was land, or some sort of land over there. But maybe he would have thought that's what it was like farther north or something, who knows. But
It was one of the Egyptians.
Ptolemy?
One of the lords.
Yes.
He made a false calculation. That's why Columbus thought he was in India.
Yes, because he had gone the distance that he thought he should have gone. So we're very fond of judging Columbus today. Oh, what a stupid mistake. How did he not know he wasn't there? But, you know, I challenge you to get in a boat and just sail into the unknown. And, you know, and if his calculations were mistaken, but he was following them and he thought, well, I have gone as far as I should have gone to reach it. Anyway, that's my Columbus defense. But yeah, that's the connection. I told you guys over and over, everything's connected. Everybody who does something had somebody who came before them that did something or said something that inspires them. And then it just, you pass the baton, you know, like one of those relay races. You just keep passing it forward. It's crazy. But it makes history hard, because where do you start and where do you stop? Everything's connected. So let me read a couple of things that Marco tells us. Now, I am not going to judge whether or not I believe that Marco is mistaken. I always feel bad to judge someone who actually went there and I was not there, but yet sometimes people from long ago tell us things that we think, yeah, that could so never happen. That is not true. I don't know, because when I read this, I can hear the uproar of indignation already rising in this room. I don't know. Okay, yeah, right. See, I don't know. He was telling the story in a prison before a group of people and writing it, and it would be very, very tempting to embellish, wouldn't it? To make it sound more interesting. However, this first thing I'm going to read to you, well, I will explain it after I read it. Oh, actually, that's not the first thing. This one's kind of cool, okay? This one's the longest one I'm going to read, so bear with me, okay? The city I have mentioned, which stands at the point where the traveler enters the great desert, is a big city called Lop, and the desert is called the Desert of Lop. The city is subject to the Great Khan, and the inhabitants worship Muhammad. I can tell you that travelers who intend to cross the desert rest in this town for a week to refresh themselves and their beasts. At the end of the week, they stock up with a month's provisions for themselves and their beasts. Then they leave the town and enter the desert. The desert is reported to be so long that it would take a year to go from end to end. But at the narrowest point, it takes a month to cross it. It consists entirely of mountains and sand and valleys. There's nothing at all to eat. But I can tell you that after traveling a day and a night, you find drinking water. Not enough to supply a large company, but enough for 50 or 100 men with their beasts. And all the way through the desert, you must go for a day and a night before you find water. And I can tell you that in 3 or 4 places, you find the water bitter and brackish. But at all the other watering places, that is 28 in all, the water's good. Beasts and birds, there are none, because they find nothing to eat. But I assure you that one thing is found here, that a very strange one, which I will relate to you. The truth is this: when a man is riding by night through this desert and something happens to make him loiter and lose touch with his companions by dropping asleep or for some other reason, and afterwards he wants to rejoin them, then he hears spirits talking in such a way that they seem to be his companions. Sometimes indeed they even hail him by name. Often these voices make him stray from the path so that he never finds it again. And in this way many travelers have been lost and have perished. And sometimes in the night they are conscious of a noise like a clatter of a great cavalcade of riders away from the road. And believing that these are some of their own company, they go where they hear the noise. And when day breaks, find they are victims of an illusion and in an awkward plight. And there are some who, in crossing this desert, have seen a host of men coming towards them, and suspecting that they were robbers, have taken flight. So having left the beaten track, and not knowing how to return to it, they have gone hopelessly astray. Yes, and even by daylight men hear these spirit voices, and often you fancy you are listening to the strains of many instruments, especially drums, and the clash of arms. For this reason, bands of travelers make a point of keeping very close together. Before they go to sleep, they set up a sign pointing in the direction in which they have to travel. And round the necks of all the beasts they fasten little bells, so that by listening to the sound, they may prevent them from straying off the path. I have nothing to say about spirit voices in the desert, although it does remind me of the Arabian Nights stories and the genie, the jinn in the desert doing sort of creepy, weird things. I don't know. It also reminds me of going through Mirkwood.
Yeah.
What? No. But then it also, my logical self then wants to say, how do they know that's what happens to them if they are lost and irrevocably, irretrievably lost? Then who tells the story? But maybe somebody else, you know what I mean? If no one comes back to say, I heard voices and was led off the path, somebody must have gotten back to say, I heard voices and was led off the path, but I found the way back, and now I'm telling you the story. Does that make sense? Because if they were just lost, I don't know. Okay, here's the one that you'll rise in indignation. It's much shorter. Andaman is a very big island. The people have no king. They are idolaters and live like wild beasts. Now let me tell you of a race of men well worth describing in our book. You may take it for a fact that all the men of this island have heads like dogs, and teeth and eyes like dogs. For I assure you that the whole aspect of their faces is that of big mastiffs, and they are a very cruel race. Whenever they get hold of a man who is not one of their kind, they devour him.
Doesn't sound like these are actually men. I think they're like dogs.
I don't have anything to say about that. Although, so my son, who has just gone to Fort Benning and is in the military, sends me stupid stuff on Facebook Messenger. He doesn't post it on my page because it would be embarrassing. But he sends me YouTube videos about aliens building things and stuff, you know, because he knows I'll laugh. But he had one, and it was a whole YouTube video about stories of dog-headed men, which happens more often than you would think. Now, I'm going to write this on the board. This is Greek. This is not your Latin of the day. So just calm down. Cynocephalous men. So if you want to, I don't know what to say. What? It means dog-headed. Kephale means head, and kaino means dog.
Cephalic means head.
Yes, this is Greek. Unlike Latin, caput, capitis. This wasn't even the one I was going to do, which means head, like capital punishment or decapitate. All right. Okay. Anyway. Oh, okay. Yes. Is decapitate your derivative? They don't usually give that to kids. Okay. If I sit here, I'm going to block sight. So if you really want to get into it, you can look up stories of cynocephalous men around the world. I don't know. Somebody yesterday said maybe they were just wearing wolf skins, you know, and then the head was over. You know what I mean? Maybe wearing, but there could be other people in other parts of the world, you know, wearing. Hercules wore a lion skin around, right? The Nemean lion. So, and we speculated on this because if you'd never seen someone dressed like that and you saw it, that would kind of freak you out. I was thinking yesterday, you guys probably know that horses did not live in the Americas until the Spanish brought them. Horses are not indigenous to America. And so the Spanish, when the Central Americans, you know, the Aztecs and the Aztecs saw them riding horses, they thought it was one creature, some sort of centaur creature, because they'd never seen a man riding on a horse. And we'd laugh, but if you've never seen a man riding on a horse and you didn't even know what a horse was, and you saw a person body and then a horse body, it would kind of freak you out just a little bit. I don't know what kind of horses they were riding, but any horse would freak you out if you've never seen somebody on the back of a horse. It would be disturbing. Yes, it would.
Yeah, like
we're just not, because we're used to the idea.
Really long-legged.
Yes. Yeah, and you wouldn't see the people legs, because they would be laid against the side. Anyway, I'm not going to try to convince you it would freak you out.
It's not like you'd see it. It's not like you're standing right next to it.
No, it would be in the distance. It would be in the distance. Okay, so the final weird thing, and then we'll move on. Okay. You must know about the place that he's talking about. You must know that they are by no means such as men in our country suppose, or as we portray them, half bird and half lion. He's saying they're not. Okay, before you arise in indignation. According to the report of those who have seen them, it is not true that they are a blend of bird and lion. But apparently somebody at once upon a time thought people there were, which we call a griffin. But I assure you that these men, the actual eyewitnesses, report that in build they are just like eagles, but of the most colossal size. So now they're not men at all, they're huge birds. Let me tell you first what these eyewitnesses report, and what I have seen myself. They report that they are so huge and bulky that one of them can pounce on an elephant and carry it up to a great height in the air. Then it lets go, so that the elephant drops to earth and is smashed to pulp. Whereupon the bird perches on the carcass and feeds at its ease. They have a wingspan of 30 paces, and their wing feathers are 12 paces long, and the thickness proportionate to their length. No, we're talking picking up elephants, but...
It sounds like Children of Bodom.
Oh, that's what I thought you were going to say. Yes, but you know what else it sounds like? Do you remember Sinbad? When he went, yes, the rock that had would just like picked him up and carried him somewhere, and there were a couple of stories with rocks in them. R-O-C, they usually spell the rock. Yes. So I do not know. It is interesting though that those stories, those Arabian Nights stories, originated from that same area of the world, isn't it? But I'm not telling you that there are cynocephalous men or rocks. I'm an agnostic, which means it means I do not have enough evidence to make a decision. As far as rocks and cynocephalous men go, I'm not an agnostic as far as Christianity goes. I want to make that clear. Just as far as rocks and dog-headed men go. I don't have enough information to make a decision there. Okay. My son would probably love to do some investigating. So the second thing we talked about in the second chapter were friars. Well, how is a friar different from a monk? Okay, well, monks talk to people. There are not all monasteries are cloistered. We said that they served as schools and hospitals and inns. But what makes a friar different from a monk? Different clothes. Partly. Friars travel around. Friars don't generally have a home base. They are, we would say, itinerant. Haha. Itinerant. They are itinerant. Okay, I got to give you one you don't know today. All right. So there were two main, just if I'm ever in the way, just say, Mrs. Ferguson, get out of the way. You could say it nicer than that maybe, but please get out of the way. Yes, it's on the video. Although it's not, you can, you know what this is? You know what I'm doing, zooming in, yes. I'm trying to, what do you call this? I'm doing this. Two main founders of orders of friars that were very different from each other. Saint Francis is the first one. I want to talk about him a little bit. I asked you, what things did Saint Francis value most highly besides God? Because that went without saying. What? Yeah, Jesse.
He was very good at telling people admiration.
I don't think this is Saint Francis.
No, wasn't it?
That's okay. Now I'm trying to think who it was that got. Oh, Oh, that's when he was young before he was converted. Okay. Yes, when he, okay, so let's go on that. Let me take that part first, and then we'll take the second part. When he was a young man, thank you, St. Francis was vain and loved money. His dad was a cloth merchant, and he was very well off. And so sometimes St. Francis would man his cloth stall, his cloth store. And one day, the story is that a man came and he was begging, and he just, you know, get away from here, you riffraff. I'm paraphrasing.
But the guy said in the name of God.
Yes, in the name of God. And he started to go away, and St. Francis was struck to the heart by what he had done. That he was well off and he had everything he needed, and this man had nothing. And he called him back, and he just gives to him. And this is the beginning of a change in Francis's heart. Bailey, what did you want to say? I don't hear it, but... Oh, okay. You know what, Bailey? My ears ring all the time. I have the condition where your ears ring as you get older, and it is not mine. Or it would be singing the X-Files theme. So, sorry to confess that, yes.
I think St. Francis valued poverty the poor and
Yes. This encounter with this poor man shifted so that he described himself as married to Lady Poverty. So the story is that he was at this small broken down chapel, and he heard a voice coming from the altar saying, "Francis, repair my church." And he took it very literally. He thought it meant repair this church right here. And so what he did is he stole some cloth from his dad for money to repair the church. I mean, his goals were good, but his methods were very, very poor, because you can't just steal things. His dad found out about it and called him out in the town square of Assisi in Italy, right in front of everybody. "You rotten son, Francis, and you're stealing my stuff, and I'm gonna cut off your inheritance," and blah, blah, blah. And Francis says, "Okay, you want me to give back everything?" And he gives back the cloth, he gives back whatever money he has, and he starts taking off his clothes. Because the clothes were paid for by Dad too. Oh. Good ears, Bailey. And he just strips down. And he says, "I'll give you everything. I don't want any of it." And he goes, he acquires clothes, you know, eventually. But he goes and he's living outside of Assisi, just devoting himself to prayer and basically picking up one big rock at a time and trying to repair that little church. And news of this got out. And weirdly, we've talked about this before, you would think that this would not be a real attractive thing. Oh, there's a guy out there and he has no money and he has nothing to eat and he's just picking up rocks. I'm going to go do that too. But it attracted people, mostly because he was so full of love and he was so full of joy in what he was doing. And so as he attracted followers, finally there were so many of them that they eventually approached the Pope to designate them as a new order of friars, traveling preachers. They're not going to have a home base in a monastery, but they're going to travel around. They're not going to make any provision for the future. Yes, yes, frater, friars. No. There's even one more Latin thing in your book. Wait, I heard somebody say, "I thought that." Friars, the word friar comes from frater, which means brothers, she said. Oh, okay. Gimmius means twins. So Gemini is twins. Geminus is a twin. So they would be brothers. I mean, except sometimes they're twins that are sisters. Anyway, Gemini. Okay, back to St. Francis. Sorry. Yes. So Francis and his friars, the Franciscans, started traveling around and preaching and basically living on whatever people gave them. Handouts from people, clothing handouts, food handouts. So famously, since Ella mentioned this, he loved Lady Poverty, but he also loved creation just immensely. So many people, you might see people have a St. Francis statue. Often it's a bird bath or something, and you put it in your flower garden because St. Francis, that's where St. Francis would have hung out if he were here right now, outdoors. So the famous story is that once he was traveling and he encountered a group of birds. When he was close to them and saw that they were waiting him, he gave them his accustomed greeting. But not a little surprised that the birds did not fly away, as they are wont to do, he was filled with exceeding joy and humbly begged them to hear the word of God. And after saying many things to them, he added, "My brother birds, much ought ye to praise your Creator, and even to love him, who has given you feathers for clothing, wings for flight, and all that ye had need of. God has made you noble among his creatures, for he has given you a habitation in the purity of the air. And whereas ye neither sow nor reap, he himself doth still protect and govern you without any care of your own." On this, as he himself and the brethren who had been with him used to say, those little birds, rejoicing in wondrous fashion after their nature, began to stretch out their necks, spread their wings, open their beaks, and gaze upon him. And then he went to and fro amidst them, touching their heads and bodies with his tunic. At length he blessed them, and having made the sign of the cross, gave them leave to fly away to another place. But I'm going to have a picture I want to show you. He also famously wrote a poem, a song that we call the Canticle of the Sun, in which he refers to the sun as our brother, and the moon as our sister, and fire and water, and all these things as our brothers and sisters, because God made them too. God made them too. He wasn't putting them equal with humanity. He wasn't saying they were made in the image of God, but they were made by the hand of God. And it makes them our brothers and sisters, which is kind of a pleasant way to think about it. So do you remember, I'm going to take you way back to August now. Do you remember that on the very first day of class, I brought two pictures. I brought two pictures of Mary and Jesus. One was a Byzantine picture, and one was a medieval picture by an artist named, and this is not Latin. Got that on recording, by Giotto. He was Italian, lived in Florence, I think. And he is considered sort of the beginning of the Renaissance. He was the first guy who started really shifting that stiff Byzantine formality into something more gentle and realistic. And he actually was hired in Assisi to do a series of paintings, panels on the church there about St. Francis. St. Francis of Assisi. Mm-hmm. This is the guy. And this is Giotto's painting, St. Francis and the Birds. I'm going to bring it, it's worth, here, I will just, if you're watching this in a recording, you can look this up on Google, St. Francis and the Birds, Giotto, all right? So I'm going to bring this around to each table just to give you a moment. It's just lovely. First of all, I mean, it's very muted colors, but the way he's standing, it's just, he's in the process of leaning over to reach out to the birds. It's not stiff. It's beautiful. I don't know who the companion is. It is just one of his companions, and I'm sorry, I do not know. Here, I'm going to come around this way so I don't trip myself.
Who's the person standing beside you?
I do not know, and it doesn't tell me on the back. I'm not sure anybody knows for sure. I feel like I've looked this up before. I have not. Here, Roy, you want to come up here and can you see from there? Some of the birds are so faded in. I'm not sure if it's a fresco. You know, some of the birds are so faint you can barely see that they're birds, you know. But this is just one of a series of panels that he did. Yeah, St. Francis of Assisi.
Yeah, but when it comes to the dome of being bad, he said even Francis of Assisi was super bad.
Yes, that's the joke, because St. Francis would never shoot a dog. Yeah. If St. Francis shot a dog, he'd be really, really upset.
That's what they're saying.
Yes. No, it was just a joke. So St. Francis, poor, in love with life in all its forms, and not giving any care to the future. We got in a little, not argument yesterday, but one of my students brought up, well, is it right? We shouldn't all just give away all our stuff, because if we have possessions, we can use them to help others. And I guess my answer is, like Jesus' answer when Peter said about John, well, what about him? Like, why do you ask about him? To his own master he stands or falls, you follow me. Right? If God asks me to do something, I'm supposed to do it and not judge what God asks other people to do. Does that make sense? So, you know, some people really, really have trouble with money. I don't mean they spend it poorly. I mean they're in love with it. You know what I mean? We're all kind of in love with something that we shouldn't be in love with, sort of. That's part of being sinful. But your things are different. So, you know, a young man came to Jesus, the rich young ruler, and he had all the right answers, but Jesus said, this one thing you lack. Sell your possessions, give the money to the poor, and come follow me. But does that mean he asks everybody to sell all their possessions? It doesn't. But maybe the rich young ruler had a problem with money loving. And that was the thing that was holding him back. And maybe for you, that's not a problem. You're not in love with your things. But if I'm in love with it more than God, I should probably get rid of it. Does that make sense? Whatever it is. But that's hard. I say that kind of like it's easy. It's really, really super hard. But so maybe St. Francis was like that. You know, he was that rich, vain, money-loving young man, and maybe that was the medicine that his soul needed. He needed to be poor. I don't know. Yeah, Ellen.
That story of the rich young ruler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jesus, like what he must do. And
Not what everyone must do.
yeah, but also we don't have to do anything. You know, I mean, like we don't have to like do good works. We can't get anything from God.
This is very true.
I think Jesus was like, okay, we've done all this, so like he just was trying to find him to do something.
Yes.
And that's why it was so hard for him, because nobody's perfect.
No. No. You're absolutely right. We get in for free, but after we're in, we will naturally do things. And James tells us if we don't do anything, we don't really have faith. Like, we don't, it's not real. So, these things that, like two sides of a coin, you know, they're stuck together. Anyway, that's St. Francis. St. Dominic, what did he love? What was his thing? Teaching and learning, particularly making sure people understood the truth. So there were heresies, false beliefs that were starting to arise in the church, and he spent his time refuting those. And these guys lived at the same time. Their lives overlap. And so there's a great long poem in Italian that hopefully you guys will read when you're in high school called The Divine Comedy by an Italian poet named Dante. And in the third part, he sees heaven. He's in heaven. And St. Francis and St. Dominic are in heaven. And it's so lovely because a Franciscan stands up to praise Dominic. And a Dominican stands up to praise Francis. See, even though they loved different things, they're both important. We need both, right? We need people to go out and be willing to just pour their lives out in service to the poor. We need people to learn, to know the truth. We need all of us. right? Because we're one body. The joke on Dominic's followers, the joke on their name, they're Dominicans, Dominicanes. Yeah, but you guys know, I'm sure, if we separate those words right there, it means dogs of the Lord. They're God's watchdogs. That's what the Dominicans came to be known as. It's kind of a joke because it just naturally comes from their name. So the dogs of the Lord are the hounds, the wolves of God, chasing down false belief and false teaching and making sure people are telling the truth. Yeah, it is cool. That is all I have to say about the friars. It is. Dogs of the Lord. Just like, Anno Domini means what? I'll take away the canes. I'll take away the dogs. I feel like if you did first form Latin, you had to memorize this. AD, Anno Domini means? I already told you this meant of the Lord. In the year. It's ablative, if that matters to you. In the year of the Lord. This year is 2021 AD. It's been 2021 years since Jesus was born, roughly. Okay. It is the year of our Lord. And that's how we tell time now.
Oh, it doesn't say that.
No, it doesn't. Anno Domini.
Oh, that's why it doesn't make sense when it starts, when Jesus' birth
Yes.
is 1.
A lot of people make that mistake because BC means before Christ. But Anno Domini is Latin. Anno Domini in the year of our Lord. I'm so sorry. Okay, all right, I'll leave it. All right, while you write that down, if you wish to, I will pass out your reading questions. We're going to read, by the way, no writing over Thanksgiving. Well, but I am going to have you read, because if you don't read anything, then when we come back, there's nothing to discuss. Do you know what I mean? So, but I'm not asking you to read an inordinate huge amount, and what I am going to have you read should be kind of fun. But in the Dorothy Mills book, I have it at the top, we're going to read only part 1 in chapter 18. No, there's more, Maya. And chapter 19. Okay, sorry. But it's not a crazy amount. I didn't double down on everything, so don't worry. I think I have extras. All right, I'm going to come around. Okay.
Would you say chapter 18?
It's at the top.
Oh,
right.
okay.
It's fine.
Ha, he gave it to me.
That was not I was not communicating anything special. Mr. Boy, Matthias. There you go, madam. All right. So we finished the Children of Odin this week. And it's not happy. Norse mythology just isn't a happy ending sort of thing, is it? All the stories end up being sad, I feel like, which is, oh, I've got my microphone covered. Wonder how long that's been happening. Yes, Rhett.
I wonder why Thor just died in the middle of the chapter.
Why he what?
Why Thor died in the middle of the chapter. Like, there was the one chapter where it's like titled like the death of Sigmund. And,
The last chapter? You mean the Ragnarok? See if you can find it. Show me what page we're talking about. Okay, tell me what page you're on, Rhett. Okay. So where does Odin die in this? Sigurd. Oh, Thor. Who are we talking about died?
so Sigurd dies on page
Yes.
But then in the middle of the one chapter, apparently Thor dies by the snake's venom or something.
Is this, but is this the last chapter when everything's, yeah. Because then a bunch of them die in that one.
Yeah, Thor dies in the last chapter.
Yes. And all the gods, except the few handful that are going to live, die in the last chapter. Now, I need to make point something out. This hasn't happened yet. She wrote Ragnarok like it's already happened, but for Norse mythology, it is going to happen. But it's so prophetically laid out that they know exactly what's going to happen. Does that make sense? So she wrote it as if it's a done deal, and now all of us are descendants of those two people. For Norse mythology, they didn't think it had happened yet. No, I don't think so. Do you know what? This is funny. Oh, is that your oh, no. His name is, you pronounce it Pathric. I know, because he's Welsh. Padraic, and I didn't know this until last year. Pathric. Pathric column.
The front of the book is called Odin, but then in the middle of the book,
Yes, which, again, don't be hung up on that. It's not, there are alternate spellings. Like sometimes Brynhild is Brynhilda. Okay, so I'm not sure, do you have a question? Or does that make sense that it's going through the different ones that are done in the process of it? I wanted to point out a couple of things. Oh, see, because he has a whole series of movies. And that has led us to believe that he is important, but they're all doomed, and he just kind of goes through. Loki went full out evil, right? Kind of in the times before that you read, but this time just seriously full out evil. Yes, Alice? On the other gods. He basically joined the other side and said, we can't wait to bring Asgard down. Yes. Well, remember, did I read this last week, that he ate that heart of Golveig? Do you remember? The witch lady that we decided might be symbolic of greed and lust and just evils, and he internalized that. And so he comes back, right, and engineers the death of Balder, who is the most beloved of the gods. He was just the sweetie pie of the gods, apparently. Everybody loves Balder, but not Loki. So his parents, Odin and his wife have taken a vow from everything in creation that they won't hurt Balder, except for the mistletoe. Except for mistletoe. And because mistletoe is just so, what's it going to do? Except that it grows on a bush that you can sharpen into a stake and throw as a projectile, apparently. And Loki comes and engineers the death of Balder. Then, do you remember this? He refuses to mourn. Remember, they were going to let him away from Hela if unless one creature refused to mourn. If all the world was mourning for Balder. Yeah, not going to mourn for Balder. Great, he's going to stay. His wife goes there too. Moves in with Hela. Not a good place. Not a good place. Eventually, though, he's captured, right? And we have the lovely image of him hanging under this venomous serpent that drips venom on his face like acid. Except his dear wife, bless her heart, I don't know how you can be devoted to this guy, but, and I know you're like, because he's Tom Hiddleston. No. That's what she's doing now. Cupping the acidic venom in her hands. Oh, is it her hand? Oh, but does she have a bowl? Some versions it's her hands, because that would be even worse, But, okay, we'll go with bowl. We'll go with cup.
My question is, instead of holding a cup, and then why doesn't she have two? There's two things that she could have done differently. Why doesn't she have two cups, and then
Oh, see, that's a good idea. Because you know, when she dumps it, then it drips.
Why does she just bring a sword and cut it? Like,
We're going to assume that neither of these options is open to her. You guys are too logical. You have to, like, unhinge the logical part of your brain to enjoy mythology. Well, I don't really believe it happened anyway, if that makes you feel any better. But, and then we have the competing story, the side story of Sigurd, right, and Brunhild. And I just want to read a couple of, oh, that's the venom, all right. You know, if you remind me, I don't know if I have time, because I can't show it to you and record at the same time. I'm sorry, Ella's going to cry because she doesn't get to see it. Maybe we can finish and we can do my fun thing and we can just shut the video off, or the recording, and then I can bring it up. But you're all going to have to crowd around. I was going to ask the Johnsons, if there's some way I could hook it up to here, and I don't know how. So you'll just have to sort of, if I put it up on a table and you can all crowd around. Okay. So Sigurd, remember Sigurd is a hero. That's all we really need to know about Sigurd, right? His dad died in a battle, and his mom went off with this other king, and the other king raised him as his own. But he's picking on a horse. And he goes these beautiful horses across the river, and there's a stranger there. And Sigurd catches a horse, and the stranger says, "Thou hast done well. Granny, whom thou hast got, is of the breed of Sleipnir, the horse of Odin." "And I am of the race of the sons of Odin," cried Sigurd, his eyes wide and shining with the very light of the sun. "I am of the race of the sons of Odin, for my father was Sigmund, and his father was Volsung, and his father was Rerir, and his father was Siggy, who was the son of Odin." The stranger, leaning on the staff, looked on the youth steadily. Only one of his eyes was to be seen. Who was the stranger? Odin. He's only got one eye. But that eye, Sigurd thought, might see through a stone. "All thou hast named," the stranger said. Listen to this. "All thou hast named." Who was he named? All his ancestors. "Were as swords of Odin, to send men to Valhalla, Odin's hall of heroes. And of all that thou hast named, there were none but were chosen by Odin's Valkyries for battles in Asgard." Listen to what Odin just said to Sigurd. All your dad and your grandpa and your great-grandpa and your great-great-grandpa, who were they? Swords of Odin. They went out on the battlefield and killed people so that they could go to Valhalla and fight for Odin at Ragnarok. But
well, like, if you die in battle and you die valiantly,
they
then
take you
a
there.
Valkyrie comes and basically takes your body and goes to Valhalla, and then like they judge you there and you take them back to Valhalla.
And then you sit around waiting, and for Ragnarok.
And fight. And
You fight and
basically,
feast.
If I cut off Red's head right now, and he was in Valhalla, but how would we go? Where'd we go?
No, you would not. You would. No, that's not. Okay, whoa, we are veering away. So he tells Sigurd, I'm sorry, that all warriors are just swords of Odin to send people to the next life. And here's Sigurd's answer. "Too much of what is brave and noble in the world is taken by Odin for his battles in Asgard." I don't like this. Too much of what is good and noble is taken by Odin. He's talking to Odin. But he goes on. He rescues Brunhild, from the circle of fire, right? And but he gets tricked. Does everybody understand who Fafnir the dragon is? Do you remember Regin and Fafnir from the week before? Let me refresh your memory. Once upon a time, Loki killed this otter. And the otter's brothers are Regin and Fafnir. And they gave that golden hoard, Anvari the dwarf's hoard, they laid on the hare's They had to cover every hair. And apparently, Fafnir freaked out over it so much he killed their dad to take the hoard for himself, then transformed himself into a dragon because dragons are greedy. That's what dragons do. They're greedy and they lay around on hoards. And they kill people who take their stuff. That's the job of a dragon, job description. Region, however, also wants it. Do you notice how everybody wants it? It's got like a magic draw to it. Everybody wants it. So, listen to Sigurd. He found a helmet. He killed Fafnir. Remember, he digs a trench, he stabs the dragon, he's built a adjacent trench so he can roll away and get out of the flood of the poisonous, venomous dragon blood, which Region was hoping would kill him so he could have the whole hoard for himself. He found a helmet of gold and put it on his head. He found a great arm ring and put it around his arm. On top of the arm ring, there was a small finger ring with a rune engraved upon it. Sigurd put it on his finger, and this was the ring that Andvari the dwarf had put the curse upon when Loki had taken the hoard from him. It's the ring. This is the ring he's going to put on Brunhild's finger in exchange with her. The cursed ring. Keep in mind cursed rings for when we read the second semester. Cursed rings taken from creatures and hobbits and dragon hordes. So we get a backstory, right? We get a backstory of Sigurd's family. His dad Sigmund and his sister who was married off to that creepy guy. Do you remember this? And the brothers all said, oh no, we don't want to send our sister. Yeah, we're going to send her anyway, their dad said. And when they went to visit, he tried to kill them all. And then he chained them up in the woods and let wolves eat them one by one. Why do wolves only eat one a night? Apparently they're dieting. I don't know. They're on a strict ration. But the hatred arose. This guy was just rotten anyway, obviously. But the hatred arose. Do you remember a guy walked into the hall? He went to the tree that the hall was built around, to the branstock, and he thrust the sword into it. All the company were hushed. Then they heard the voice of the stranger. A voice was like that of the trumpet's call. The sword is for the hand that can draw it out of the branstock. Then he went out of the hall. Does this remind you of anything? The sword in the stone, King Arthur. King Arthur also pulled a sword out of a place that no one else could pull it out of. And now I'm just sitting here wondering why. Why would multiple people have stories about pulling? And it's very specific. Pull a sword out of something that you can't pull a sword out of. The Gordian knot.
And this guy wanted that people and diet and sliced it in half.
It was Alexander the Great.
And he was, because he was going around just conquering everywhere, and they're like,
Yes.
And then it said, therefore, you will
Through the sword, through doing something with the sword. I don't know. I have no answers. Maybe you can meditate on this, because I'm sure you will. This will be top in your mind over Thanksgiving while you're eating turkey. I wonder what's up with swords being pulled out of things. Just think it over. Cogitate from cogito, right? I think. You know what? That is not what meditating means. That is only what it means in the East. Meditating just means thinking deeply about it. We are all called to meditate on Scripture. We think deeply about it. Meditation has been stolen from us by Eastern religions, but it really means to think about it to where it becomes a part of you. Okay, that's my speech on meditation. Yes, but don't, I'm not Hindu, Buddhist meditation, not that. Here, let Alice. Here, can everybody be quiet so I can hear Alice? Thank you. Go ahead. Oh, yes.
It's weird that it's
Mjolnir. When things are translated from other languages, do not be troubled by the fact that things get spelled differently in different versions. It's just going to happen. It doesn't mean they made a mistake necessarily. So, does the story of Sigurd and Brunhild end well? Does anybody remember how the story of Sigurd and Brunhild ends? Or did we just blank out on that part because it was some sort of love story and they were marrying each other and we decided we didn't want to hear about that? Only the bravest can go through the ring of fire, hey gentlemen, but Sigurd also had the ability, I don't know if it was the ring or something else, to transform himself into another shape. So Sigurd went through it first. You are the bravest, because only the bravest can come through. But he was given a potion to forget her. He was living with a family, and the mother had her sights on him as a son-in-law. Wanted him to marry a family, but knew, as it says in the book, he had a secret remembrance. There was some woman who had his heart. So they drugged him to forget. He had no memory of Brunhild. So they show up to the same cave with his foster brother, brother-in-law. Like, I heard there's a beautiful girl in there. Like, well, go in and get her. And he can't go in because he's not the bravest guy in the world. Well, Sigurd, maybe you can do it. Why don't you turn into my shape? And you go in. He goes in again, looking like a different guy, but it's really him. Because Brunhild has not been drugged. She does remember everything. And very quickly the drugs wear off and Sigurd remembers too, but now they're stuck. He's married to somebody and she's married to somebody. And as so often happens, yeah. No, I said she was not, because he came in and rescued her. And she thought, well, maybe there's two bravest guys in the world. She did not realize that it was never him, it was Sigurd transformed to look like him. So she married him. Then the truth comes out, and Sigurd starts to remember, and there they are. It's not an option. Well, at this point, it's not an option, so maybe it doesn't even matter whether he wants to or not. I think he's just filled with remorse and horror, and he's angry because he was drugged. She, as so often happens in these stories, develops a hatred for Sigurd. What was love and admiration turns into hatred because she thinks, you forgot me. She doesn't listen to the explanations, right? And it wouldn't make her happy even if she knew the explanation. You forgot me. You put that ring, cursed ring, on my finger, and you forgot me. So she starts setting up his death. I know it. I know it. So, the end. They all die. The end. Yeah, much like Ragnarok, right? And they all die. The end. Except they don't all. There's a few remaining gods, and we have this couple that's going to repopulate. It's so depressing. But okay, so bear with me though as I say this. But is there a little glimmer of courageousness or beauty or glory to fight when you know that all will fail? That attitude says, we will fail, but yet I will fight anyway. And if you don't see it's fine. I'm speculating, and here's why I'm speculating. Two people I really, really admire loved these stories. They are C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. They loved these stories. And they said they spoke to them in a way that Greek and Roman mythology never did, because they saw something. And so I guess because I love them, I try to wonder if I can see it too. You know, I squint and I look into them like, it just seems very depressing. But they described it as this clear, cold beauty that spoke to their spirits. And C.S. Lewis, you may know, was not a Christian. You know, he was an atheist for a while. He did not grow up being a believer. When he hit college age and was a teenager, he dumped it all. Tolkien was a Christian. He always was. He never had that phase. But God used these stories to speak to C.S. Lewis's spirit in a way that I don't quite understand. And maybe that's between C.S. Lewis and God. But he tried to explain it, you know, the beauty that he saw. I don't know. So it makes me, you know, have someone you really care about like something, you want to like it too, just because they like it and you want to see what they see in it. Okay. Well, some of us do, and I feel that way about Norse mythology. But anyway, but it spoke to them. This is why I keep mentioning, remember this when we read The Hobbit, remember The Lord of the Rings, because this was Tolkien and Lewis's day job. They were medieval lit professors. That's what they did for a living. Anyway, I hope that next time you watch Avengers, though, you will know there's another story. And I would love, okay, please, I think I mentioned this in this class before. This is going to be your other Thanksgiving homework. All right? So please tell me you know who Bugs Bunny is. Okay, so years after these stories were written, obviously, there was this is not going to be Latin, so just chill. There was a musician, and his name was Richard, you pronounce, it looks like Wagner, but you pronounce it Wagner because he's German, Wagner. And he wrote operas, and he wrote an opera called The Ring of the Nibelungs, which I'm not going to spell right. Because the Nibelungs were the other family, the family that, you know, Sigurd married into, the Nibelungs. Anyway, it's an opera. It's very long. You could check it out on YouTube and see bits of it. It's about this, and the ring, right? The ring, the cursed ring. But if you want to take the shortcut like I did, and you want to know what formed Mrs. Ferguson as a person, you can look up on YouTube, I know it's there, a Bugs Bunny short called What's Opera, Doc? Okay? And it is actually the music of The Ring of the Nibelungs. It's Wagner music, only it's Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny acting it out, and I love it. I grew up loving this before I knew what the music was or anything about the Nibelungs or Sigurd or Fafnir. Anyway, so if you want to get a kick out of something it's based on something that's based on these stories. It's Bugs Bunny interprets opera, which was based on the story of Sigurd and Brunhilde. And Elmer Fudd even calls Bugs Bunny Brunhilde. Oh, Brunhilde, you're so lovely. What's opera, Doc? In this one. It's the name of the short. Yeah, we have time. Okay. I will leave this on. So, you can put it, all you're going to do is you're going to, oh, I forgot the other reading. We're going to start the Merry Adventures of Robin Hood. It's fun. All right, now this version, it's by Howard Pyle. It's written in sort of an old-fashioned-y way, but you'll get used to it very fast. That doesn't mean it's hard to read. It means they talk in a way, because this was written not very long ago. This was written, you know, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, like in 19th century maybe. This isn't from Robin Hood times, okay, in other words. It's just an interpretation of the stories of Robin Hood, but he's trying to make them talk in sort of a old-fashioned-y way, and you read a couple chapters and you'll just fall right into it, okay? So what I want you to read There goes Bugs Bunny. I'm going to have to go home and watch that today just because. So I want you to start with the prologue. There is a chapter called Prologue, and it's not an introduction by someone else. It's the beginning of the story. It tells you how Robin Hood becomes an outlaw. All right, it's that part of the story. What happens to make Robin Hood fall afoul of the law and go live out in Sherwood Forest, you know, and gather his men? You can, but you also have to read. Because there's a bunch of stories, but you're going to recognize the characters and they're going to float around in your head, Jesse, and it's fun to see them as those characters. All right, and then I want you to read through part the 4th. I don't know why they don't call it, because it's old-fashioned-y, you know. They don't just call it part 4. Part the 4th. In my book, that's, I don't know, about 100 pages, a little over, but there's pictures.
And then 2 weeks.
All right, and it's 2 weeks, and it's very, there's blank. It's not even 100 pages, and there's even songs, because Little John has to sing songs, and other people have to sing songs. So read through that. It's fun. And we're going to meet a lot of the stock characters of the Middle Ages that we know. The evil sheriff of Nottingham, right? And evil churchmen. We talked about the idea that the monasteries, when they became rich, became greedy, became not devoted to God anymore. And they are some of the worst villains in Robin Hood, along with the sheriff of Nottingham, because they are just flat out greedy. As far as we know, there really was a Robin Hood. We don't know that all of these exploits really were done, but there was a man, Robin of Locksley, and he was indeed cheated of his lands through taxation. I don't remember the circumstances exactly. We don't know a lot about him, but we're guessing this is based on a real guy, but based on. All right, not necessarily. And I want you to take note of how many times people just walk up to other people and just whack them upside the head. An amazing amount of time. They have what they refer to as a quarterstaff. Oh, and this reminds me of the Daffy Duck one. Do you remember the Daffy Duck one? Where he calls it, actually it's a buck and a quarterstaff, but I'm not telling him that. And they go out and he goes over, okay, anyway, I'm sorry. There's a Daffy Duck Robin Hood. Probably if you Google Daffy Duck Robin Hood, you'll find it. But they have staffs that they would carry, like a walking stick staff, and they just randomly challenge each other. And how many times they whack somebody so hard, it says, and his eyes were dazed in his head, and like they had concussions. Half of them must have had a concussion. Yeah. It's a little bit like a town of kids. Keep this in mind. Do you whack each other by the side of the head? Oh, okay. That seems very dangerous to me as a parent. Okay. All right. So that's all you're doing. No writing. Read Dorothy Mills. Read Robin Hood. And now we are going to do a holiday Mad Lib. Because this was always the best school day ever when I was a kid. When the teacher brought these in, it's like, oh, it's going to be riotously funny. Now, does everybody know what a Mad Lib is?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there are no Thanksgiving Mad Libs in this wonderful thing, but it's Christmas ones. So I'm going to pick a Christmas one. Oh, it'd be nice to pick one that we have. Some of these I've done 3 or 4 times, and oh, hang on. I know. Calm down. Okay. This could be for Thanksgiving. Oh, I don't want to show you that. Okay. So everybody is not going to get a turn probably to give me a word because I don't. Maybe they will.
Are we
but
just like shouting out?
no, we're going to start, and I'm going to go, and so that as many people as possible get a turn. Okay. No, because then I'll forget who I picked and who I haven't picked. I want everybody to get a turn. Would everybody like a turn? Yeah. Okay. Izzy, you're first. You ready? Give me something alive and make it plural. Bailey, a plural noun. That's okay. Just look. It's a thing. Just look. Harry Potter. Oh, it has to be plural. Make it something that could be plural. Just look around the room and pick something. Weasleys. Oh. Okay. That will be kind of funny. Okay. Addie, you get a holiday. Any holiday. New Year's Eve. Ella, plural noun. Lauren, type of container. In a Tupperware, well, a Tupperware box, we'll call it. Okay. I want to call you the wrong, Simeon. Okay, see, adjective. Oh, we're going with stupid? Stupid is an oldie but a goodie. Okay. Jacob, place, a place. Alice, another place. All right, Roy, a number. That's kind of boring, but any number. Matthias, a plural noun. I know, but we've already used fishes. Do a different one because we have already used that. No, get away from the fish. Abandon the fish. What? Squirrels. Okay, I like squirrels. Okay, so now I know I'm going to do it wrong. And you're not even in the same class anymore. Sophie. Sophie, give me a number. Oh, I like that. Okay. Oh, Julia, would you like to do it? Okay, give me a piece of furniture, and it needs to be plural. I'm sorry, I just ignored you back there. Maya, I think we're going to actually get one for everybody. Part of the body.
Oh.
Here, I'm going to tell you what each of you are going to get so you can think. Part of the body, adjective, plural noun, plural noun. So think it over.
So we were doing tablets one time, and I just had to explain this so that it didn't sound wrong.
This will be good.
We had part of the body. My friend's mom goes, it's W-E-N-I-S, and it's just pretty, so like the flabby sort of knee.
Okay, Wennis.
Sort of.
We don't want to, we're careful that there's a W starting this word. So that's your flappy elbow part. Adjective. Stinky.
Is that even an adjective?
Stinky.
Oh, I thought you said stinky.
Plural noun. Jesse. Just look around and pick something. And then make it plural. Ferraris. Oh, I like it. He says he doesn't know. Plural noun. Churches. Okay, here we go. Holiday traveling. Are we ready? During the holidays, more frogs go back home to visit their Weasleys than any other time. Between Christmas and New Year Eve, the airlines pack the fishes in like sardines. That's hilarious! Like sardines in a Tupperware box. There are a lot of stupid no-frill airlines that will take you from Colorado to Disneyland for only $200. These airlines do not give you any squirrels. They also have smaller chairs. Oh, and you have to sit on someone else's Wennis. It is very stinky to travel during the holidays, but it is worth it to make your Ferraris happy. Don't forget to make your churches early. All right, that was funny. Okay, I'm sorry. You guys are supposed to be somewhere else, so I don't think we have time to watch that video. But I bring my computer every time, so if you want to watch it some other time, I'll try to leave. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, guys.